Good afternoon to all the Perkins stakeholders throughout the state of Texas and maybe even throughout the nation. I am Leslie Keeling Olson, and with me is Leisha Smith. We both work at Temple College. Before we get into the specifics of the webinar for 2P1, we want to share with you how we arrived at this Perkins Leadership Project. This project is the third iteration of a state leadership project designed to bring awareness to the Perkins Basic Grant Directors on ways to improve the Perkins core indicators. Specifically 2P1, Credential, Certificate, or Diploma, 3P1, Student Retention or Transfer, and 4P1, Student Placement. How did we get here? In 2015-2016, we created a list of promising best practices and performance improvement plan catalogs for 2P1, Credential, Certificate, or Diploma, 3P1, Student Retention or Transfer, and 4P1, Student Placement. In 2016-2017, we created regional partnerships and mentoring models with the hope of adoption of the models on a statewide level. Accordingly, we welcome all of you to our first webinar to assist in the capturing and sharing of a wealth of information to assist you in improving your Perkins Core Indicator statistics for 2P1, Credential, Certificate, or Diploma, 3P1, Student Retention or Transfer, and 4P1, Student Placement. The grant that is funding this webinar was written to attempt to preserve a vast amount of knowledge that may be leaving our Perkins community due to a number of retirements occurring in this field. Thus, the purpose of this overarching grant theme evolved during the conclusion of another state leadership grant that we managed last year that explored the need to establish statewide mentoring networks throughout the state of Texas. Throughout this project, we need to reach Perkins Basic Grant Directors on a statewide Throughout this project, the need to reach Perkins Basic Grant Directors on a statewide level became very apparent. Specifically, there have been significant turnovers in senior-level Perkins Basic Grant Directors. We also discovered that many times Perkins Basic Grant staff utilize a continuation of past products out of sheer necessity and perhaps a lack of available time. We are very aware that this position is often lumped into a job description as another job as assigned and not always funded as a salaried position. As you all know, it takes a while to understand the specifics and nuances of each core indicator. Hence, this grant was written and implemented with the purpose of reaching the greatest number of Perkins stakeholders throughout the state of Texas in the most productive and wide-reaching format we could find in order to provide very intentional, intensive, and involved training focusing on these specific Perkins core indicators. Therefore, for the next 3 months, webinars will be aired that discuss each of these indicators in the greatest depth of understanding that we can achieve. However, the purpose of today's webinar is to help you have a better understanding of a specific Perkins core indicator, 2P1, Credential, Certificate, or Diploma. So let's begin. Although we have previously stated this specifically, we want to remind you this webinar will focus solely on 2P1, Credential, Certificate, or Diploma, what is sometimes called student completion. Everything we are presenting, we tried to look at from both a senior Perkins perspective and also from the perspective of someone who might be brand new to Perkins. Yes, there are times the core indicators can interrelate, but we did not want to highlight or emphasize those interrelations with this webinar. That being said, we will approach 2P1 by looking at the different aspects and answers to very specific questions of the who, what, where, when, where, why, and how to 2P1. The software we are using gives us the ability to embed poll questions. We have 2 poll questions embedded in this webinar. Please take a moment and answer the first question. Please bear with us momentarily as people are answering this poll.
Hi everyone, I am Leisha Smith, After conducting some data analysis, we reached out to individuals who could help us provide information and understanding of 2P1. We would like to introduce the 2P1 webinar leaders. With us today, we have two seasoned Perkins Basic Grant Directors, Dr. Catherine O'Brien and Ms. Michelle Freeman. Two Perkins Basic Grant Directors who were selected based on the consistency of their institution's data results, either meeting or exceeding their state targets, Mr. Wayne Garza and Ms. Cheryl George Jones. And we'll revisit with Dr. Olson again. She is a Perkins Basic Grant Director, and her participation in this last slot is to represent an institution that has seen significant improvement with her core indicator data. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone to Dr. Olson so she can introduce the topic of 2P1, Credential, Certificate, or Diploma.
Before I get started on this next slide and my information, I want to take a quick opportunity and share our poll data with you. For those of y'all that are here that have had 10 plus years, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate you, because I know I probably have learned from you over the years. We have about 18% of our participants today that have had 6 to 10 years, but more than 41% of the people that are watching today have less than 1 year. And we are so glad you've joined us today, and we really hope this is productive for you and helps give you a lot of information. And I will say it now, although it will be reiterated again. Don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. So if you have problems or frustrations, we would love to help you. However, I always have to give credit back to the Perkins program directors. Donna Carlin and her team of staff are always your first point of contact. We just want to make sure we can do whatever is possible to supplement you and them. So here we go. Hi again. I previously introduced myself, but here's the rest of the story. I love being at Temple College and working with what I call my statewide Perkins family. When the responsibility of being the Perkins Basic Grant Director was first assigned to me, I was blessed to have someone at Temple College, Dr. Jimmy Roberts, who helped me understand Perkins, and it's now time for me to pay this gift forward and help others in the way that I was helped. Many of you may be watching this webinar thinking, my institution is okay. We are meeting or exceeding the state performance targets for the indicators. I wonder why these people are concerned about 2P1, because completion is not a difficult concept to comprehend. For some of you, your institutions may be fine, but as a whole, state improvement is needed. Although we have all read the definition of 2P1, which is presented in the slide, I want to make note that is the number of concentrators, not the average of the program percentages, that determine the institutional performance on 2P1. You can look at individual program percentages, and you'll be required to list the different CTE programs you are using for your performance improvement or evaluation plans. However, a struggling program is often representative of a program that has small enrollment. If you have a program with only 20 students and 5 do not complete, then the average is lower than a program that has 100 students and 5 do not complete. There are times we can get caught up in individual programs instead of remembering how the data are used to determine our core indicator. Why are we focusing on 2P1? First and foremost, we chose these 3 core indicators because reallocation dollars are based on meeting 2P1, 3P1, and 4P1. Nevertheless, from 2011 to 2016, Texas has seen both 3-point increases and decreases in our performance of 2P1. If you examine the state performance data over the last 8 years, you will notice Texas is erratic at best in our performance of 2P1. Additionally, we have only met the target twice in the last 8 years, which is reflected by the blue dots on the chart. It is interesting to note the target has trended down the last few years. The target in 2011 was 36, whereas the target in 2016 was 32. Although some Perkins Basic Grant Directors are seeing significant success in 2P1, I can see that many institutions are struggling. Additionally, it's hard for us as a state to work on statewide performance without helping each other. Please know, we are not trying to single out any institution, but we want you to know that this webinar is designed to give all of us a better understanding of 2P1 and to find ways for all of us to meet or exceed the targets set by the Higher Education Coordinating Board. It's now time to dig deeper into the data, so I'm going to turn the mic over to Dr. O'Brien.
Thank you, Leslie. Good afternoon. In order to understand the data, you need to know where to find the data. Your best institutional source is the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. They are at their website, which is located at the bottom there of our next slide as your source. You can go in, you can look at your data, you can look at data from other colleges. Within your institution, your resource is the person who submits and or works with the data that goes into the CBM reports that are sent to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. For example, that could be your registrar or it could be someone within your IE office. Get to know that person and set aside time to review and discuss your data each year. Next slide. When you're reviewing the data, remember, data is 2 to 3 years old. Comparing the numbers across the top of the slide right there, 2013 to 2014, 2014 to 15, 2015 to 16, and 2016 to 17. Look then at the source in the yellow line with the arrow pointed to you at the bottom. The reporting years are 12-13, 13-14, and 14-15. So if you are looking at your data for 2014-15, that data was actually recorded by your institution in 2013-14. If you are in the red for 2014-15, then you would need to go back and look at your 2013-14 data to try and figure out what was going on in that year. This year is 2016-17 as far as the data goes, even though we are in the 2017-18 school year. If your data were to suddenly become green, what green means is that your state has achieved the state target or achieved the 90% of the state target. Whatever magic you did back in 2015, 2016 is what was going to give you green in 2016, 2017. So again, what strategies were you doing in that year that produced a positive result 2 to 3 years later? There is an advantage to setting strategies and not changing them from year to year so you can actually get a feel for what is working and what is not working. Next slide, please. The definitions for the CBM reports can be found in the CBM reporting manuals, and we've given you the link to the source at the bottom of this slide. You also need to understand the terminology and what types of data have changed or altered over time. And the coordinating board provides you with that kind of data within these reporting manuals. Next slide. The data that goes into 2P1 comes from CBM 001, CBM 002, and CBM 009. The definition for CBM 001 is there on the screen for you, but in summary, CBM 001 captures all of the students that are in a class on the official census date and tracks those students through to completion. Next slide. Couple of frequently asked questions. Is a CTE student taking one technical class listed in the CBM 001 report? The answer is yes. Is an academic student taking one technical class listed in the CBM 001 report? Yes. Does the ability of an academic student to dabble in CTE classes affect my data? The answer is yes. Next slide. To continue understanding the data, the CBM 002 reports any students who have attempted credit hours in an approved course on the census date. If the CBM student is in CBM 001 and their credit hours are reported in CBM 002, again, that student is going to be tracked to completion. Next slide. CBM 009 is the report that tracks the awards and certificates. For Perkins purposes and for the purpose of our discussion, these certificates and degrees are the level 1 certificates that are 15 to 42 semester credit hours, level 2 certificates at 30 to 51 semester credit hours, and the AAS degrees at 60 hours. So again, if the students are beginning your classes, they are reported in CBM 001, CBM 002, then what we are looking for is that student's name and completion in CBM 009. Next slide. If a college waits until the student receives the AAS degree and then looks backwards to award the certificate, will the college get credit for both the degree and the certificate? The answer is no. The college will receive credit for one reward, the highest award given in that 1 year. The solution to this problem is automatic awarding of certificates as they are being earned, so that maybe in 1 year you're getting credit for the certificate and in the next year you would be receiving credit for the degree. Next slide. The CBM 00M report reports occupational skills certificate awards. These were formerly called the Marketable Skills Achievement Awards. That is, those that are from 9 to 14 semester credit hours or 144 to 359 contact hours within continuing education. So those awards are recorded as part of the data as well. Thank you for your time today, and I would now like to introduce my colleague, Michelle Freeman from Tyler Junior College.
Thank you, Dr. O'Brien. Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Freeman, and I work for Tyler Junior College. I have been the Perkins Data Grant Coordinator for 7 years, with 14 years total in the Perkins world. With that, it may seem that I have a lot of experience, but I can honestly say that I continue to learn every day with Perkins. In the next few slides, I am going to talk about the what and why to 2P1 program completion. To begin the discussion, we need to all be aware of what THECB says we need to do to be in compliance. This link directs you to the request for applications, the infamous RFA that is often a topic of discussion in our Perkins world. This is the document where THECB provides all the information that you will need in preparing your Perkins grant application. Note, when the 2017-2018 RFA was deployed, many of us had a moment of confusion as we figured out that our beloved PIPs, Performance Improvement Plans, had been changed to PIEP, Performance Improvement Evaluation Plans. So the what and why to TP1 program completion. How do you do that? You need to educate everyone involved in your institution on the core indicators and the importance they provide with Perkins funding. Review the data resources that are provided by THECB and see where your institution is lacking or excelling. Know where you can find or who to contact for your institution's data. Frequently asked question: why would my institutional data look different than the data reflected by THCB? The possible answers are zip codes not matching, inventory access and update data, institutional silos. Zip codes are codes that institutionally match program inventory. If you find zip codes not matching, find out who is in charge of changing program inventory at your institution. So many people touch the data, so communication plays a vital role for success. This is particularly true if you work in an environment where there are silos. Perkins is not a quick fix, so if you do find errors, you have to research the differences. Some examples of activities, strategies that I apply to the programs may be purchasing certification kits or funding certification exams. With the certification kits, professors will train students throughout the semester and the student will test for certification. Also, funding a special population student with their certification exams will help in improving or maintaining your 2P1. Frequently asked question. When selecting the CTE program or the focus of your activities and strategies within 2P1, do you focus on high enrollment programs or low enrollment programs? Answer, it depends. 2P1 data is not based on individual program percentages, but on a total CTE concentrators. At my institution, we choose to focus on high enrollment programs because your Perkins dollars impact a larger percentage of CTE learners, whereas Leslie at Temple College focuses on low enrollment programs because of internal program review goals. So the bottom line is, know your data. This will be your institution's data resources provided by THECB and your institutional data. Choose your program and plan your activity. Choose which CTE program you will target and plan your activity from the data. Apply Perkins funding. Budget your Perkins funding towards your specific activity and collect your results. Results will take time to reflect on THECB's data resources. You may be able to find quicker results from your institution's evaluation plan, which is your PIEP. The next slide will give an example of historical analysis and lead into the next FAQ. Can your data change? Leslie is more of an expert in this area, so I'm going to hand it off to her.
What I've done here is provide you some information from your FAQ. Appendix F, Federal Core Indicators of Performance in 2017-2018 state targets beginning with the 2008-2009 academic program year and thereafter. States are required to submit their performance indicator data to the United States Department of Ed, Office of Career Technical and Adult Education, OCTAE, via their consolidated annual reports called a CAR. Each applicant is required to meet the state targets within 90% for each core indicator. Page 5 of the RFA indicates how reallocation dollars are spent. The pool of eligible recipients will be awarded applicants whose performance on core indicators 2P1, 3P1, and 4P1, established by the United States Department of Education for the Perkins Basic Grant Program, meets or exceeds the federally negotiated state targets, and this is in Appendix F. The coordinating board negotiates targets. You will notice in the slide that the target has gone up and then recently progressed back down. Additionally, the 90% mark is where they indicate red markings. We have used institutions that represent our panel members so that we can show you examples of how the targets could change. Next, I'd like to pass the mic to Juan Garza from Texas State Technical College.
Hello, everyone. My name is Juan Garza. I'm with Texas State Technical College, and I have been the Perkins Project Director for the past 5 years. I will be discussing some of the barriers that affect student completion. Next slide, please. As many of you know, student completion has many barriers. One of the most common barriers to completion is the lack of stackable credentials within a program of study. In some instances, gateway courses such as algebra and composition present themselves as barriers to students who are not TSI compliant. Hence, by providing students with stackable pathways, they will be able to complete and obtain a credential with the added benefit of having the opportunity to complete their AAS degree when they're ready. Along with discussing pathways that incorporate stackable credentials with multiple exit points, we will also be discussing the lack of financial resources for student exams and licensure fees. And we will also discuss the limited resources available for certification and licensure prep content. Before we take a look at an example of a stackable credential, let's take a closer look at the credentials themselves. What is a certificate? Certificates are awarded upon the successful completion of a brief course of study, usually 1 year or less, but at times longer, primarily in public or private 2-year institutions of higher education. More common technical certificates are not standalone, but rather lead to an AAS degree in the same or similar field of study. What is certification? Certification indicates mastery of or competency in specific knowledge, skills, or processes that can be measured against a set of accepted standards. These are not tied to a specific educational program, but are typically awarded through assessment and validation of skills in cooperation with a business, trade association, or other industry group, essentially external entities. After attaining a certification, individuals must often meet ongoing requirements to maintain the currency of the certification. Some examples include Cisco and Microsoft certifications. What is a degree? An academic degree is an award or title conferred upon an individual for the completion of a program or courses of study over multiple years at post-secondary educational institutions. From a Perkins perspective, this refers to an Associates of Applied Science degree. What is a licensure? A license is legal permission typically granted by a government agency to allow an individual to perform certain regulated tasks or occupations. A license can be obtained by meeting certain requirements set forth by the licensor, or usually by completing a course of education and/or assessments. Upon completion, receipt of a license, ongoing requirements may be necessary to maintain the license. More common licensures include registered nurse license and master plumber and electrician licenses. Note, both licensure and certifications have external entities that validate the credential. The terms are sometimes used interchangeably, but they are distinct credentials. We are now looking at an example of our automotive degree plan at TSTC that incorporates multiple stackable credentials. Our intention is to have as many degree offerings with various exit points that provide students with completion milestones. This may include Level 1 and Level 2 certificates that may be embedded as part of an AAS degree in order to provide students with multiple credentialed exit points. In the example provided, automotive technology students have an opportunity to exit with a certificate Level 1, Level 2, or an AAS degree. In addition, students completing a certificate Level 1 are also given the opportunity to attain the Ford Maintenance and Light Repair certification through their Ford Star program. The goal is to provide students with value-added, stackable credentials. Question: is it allowable to use Perkins funding to pay directly for CTE student tuition? No, students should not receive Perkins funds directly. However, there are other allowable direct services that may be provided directly to students using Carl Perkins or other funding sources. We will review some of those examples in the next slides. One of the ways in which we can facilitate the cost of certifications and licensure exams is to consider including those costs as part of a student's tuition and fees. However, please note that this may require your college's local board of directors approval. In the example provided, aviation students at TSTC may pay over $1,000 in exams fees to become a certified Federal Aviation Administration aircraft mechanic. This is a considerable cost to students and something that your college may consider investigating as a possible option. An additional resource that may be developed by leveraging Carl Perkins funding is the establishment of a lending library geared towards targeting certification and licensure prep content. The content would then be available to help both students and faculty prepare for their certifications and licensures. Similarly, peer tutors may also be funded through Perkins and can help provide tutoring and mentoring support for the attainment of the certifications and licensures. Finally, colleges may also consider using Perkins funding to provide qualifying CTE students with support services that provide assistance such as childcare and transportation. Again, these are just some examples to consider. We will now hear from Cheryl George Jones and her success at Houston Community College.
Good evening, everyone. I am Cheryl George Jones, and I work as the program director here at the college. And I'm pretty fortunate to have a program manager and also an office manager to assist me with administering this Perkins grant. Today, I'll be talking about the institutional highlights for Houston Community College. Over the past coming years, HCC has undergone tremendous transformation district-wide. And during the transformation, the new leadership thought it best to provide and to come up with 13 workforce centers of excellence is what they actually call it, COEs, and they were implemented. But in order to assist with these centers of excellence, there needed to be some assistance in to help meet each of the core indicators as funded. And several positions were, as a result of this to come up with at least positions that could help to reach our core indicators. We also added success coaches, advisors, community liaisons, and also web degree specialists. Our methodology for this formula consisted of, which you'll later see in the slides next, consisted of people, which we consider that to be the Perkins funded staff. And then with that, we have data-driven decisions plus strategic planning, which equaled what we considered our success in achieving all of our co-indicators. Some additional highlights was the Perkins funded team, which we call their role in the goal was to establish a team to gather data, to identify CTE opportunities, and also to shape strategies to assist with and assess those results. In doing so, we collaborated to understand a myriad of pathways students follow as they move into the institution to determine where their progress stalled before completing. And in shaping strategies and actions, we created these positions to assist all CTE students in their effort to complete, more or less to finish what they started. Next slide. The HCC model for student completion and how it may translate to a smaller model. Again, we talked about the people, which you can see are the Perkins funded staff. They were put in place. And then we were able to connect with our students, especially those that we felt were falling through the cracks, so to speak. And then with that, we were able to assist with many decisions to lead to their success. The Perkins funded staff does not have to be Perkins paid. Let's first understand that. But because HCC is such a large institution, and we continue to receive a large amount of Perkins allocations, we took a risk to fund these particular positions through staffing. And with that, in hopes of helping to improve our areas, again, as the indicators were listed, that we were falling in and falling out of compliance with. We realized that many Perkins basic grant directors may not receive such large amounts of financial awards to fund such a model as you see listed. But our concerns were funding these salaries through the grant could later cause job losses. But after 3 consecutive years of success, is many of the positions will be embedded into the operations budget. A note, once again, once the salaries are moved into hard money, it cannot be moved back onto the Perkins grant. So the 3 critical elements of 2P1 are to create a culture of completion. The first thing of hiring was to provide Perkins funded staff district-wide to the college, and who these staffing were to be committed to the success of each of the students with institutional aligned goals. The second was decisions and data-driven decisions are reported and maintained throughout the grant year. Third and finally, the strategic planning, which involves maintaining student relationships, being accountable, having the students to set goals, meeting deadlines for the overall funding of the resources. So we put Perkins funded staff together, came up with decisions and made those decisions data driven, and then we created the strategic planning, which equaled our success for the Perkins grant. Question: are all of the funding staff positions through the Perkins grant, can that be found on Schedule D? And this is as you're doing your proposal, and the answer is false. When you're doing the proposal, and if you decide to use positions to fund through the Perkins grant, the answer is the staff position should be funded and can be found on Schedule A. Finally, once you're doing the proposal, again, we took a risk as a college, but we found that everything was successful in our favor. Next, I'd like to pass the mic back to Dr. Leslie Keeling Olson.
As previously stated, we had different individuals that came to help us on this grant that became our panelists. Temple College has seen significant success in 2P1 by concentrating on the advantages of cohort programs, institutional effectiveness and CTE collaboration, and data monitoring. We have numerous CTE programs that are cohort programs, so keeping students progressing toward their final goal provides sustainability and motivation for the entire group. The time period that someone drops out of the cohort is usually a retention issue and not a completion issue. We have a strong collaboration with our institutional effectiveness staff and our CTE programs. The IE office sends up lists of majors so that the CTE department chairs can make sure that everyone has the correct listings of who is accepted, active, and progressing through the program. We supplement the 2 points above with data monitoring. This process has previously been explained through the collaboration with the IE and the CTE departments, but this step also includes assessment of our data, evaluation of student success, referrals to student services, referrals to career coaching, and overall development of an understanding of our students and the issues that are hindering them from success. When we developed the promising best practices, we asked eligible institutions to submit what they consider to be their promising best practices that worked for them. I have inserted the link here for the list of promising best practices, but if for any reason you need us to send it to you, we will. For today's topic, I have narrowed the promising best practices down into themes and keywords that enable discussion by these ideas. Many people suggest that we can best implement completion by providing stackable credentials. Students will see success at one level and can continue their success completion by continuing to another level. Please know, I realize that many times some of our ideas are related, so the next one, academic planning, is directly related to stackable credentials. Academic planning is multifaceted. The institution needs to plan the schedule of classes by letting students know what specific plans to follow instead of creating their own plan. Keeping them focused on the end goal does not let them ignore challenges within the certificate or degree and allows them to plan the other aspects of their life that affect most community college students. Many institutions have silos on their campuses, which creates more disadvantages than advantages. Advising collaboration keeps all CTE stakeholders invested in student success. Students receive the same and consistent answers to their questions about degrees, requirements, and completion specifics. Additionally, the collaboration keeps everyone abreast of the student's project, which will help to encourage and support completion. Automatic awarding of degrees. Why would somebody leave without filing for graduation? Many individuals think it costs money. They don't take the time to fill out the forms, or they think the institution will just send it to them. Many institutions have built-in systems that find completion and automatically award degrees. Finally, many students get into their comfort zones and don't want to leave and go into a strange new environment. Having interaction with the subject matter experts and employers creates a more comfortable aspect for the students. They no longer feel like they are walking into unknown territory if there are familiar faces in their new career. We found that many Perkins Basic Grant directors were struggling coming up with the ideas for their PIPs. PIPS, Performance Improvement Plans, now called PIPs, Performance Improvement and Evaluation Plans. The expert consultants in the field helped us to identify a catalog of ideas to share with everyone. We have received valuable feedback on Perkins directors being able to have a catalog of ideas to research or consider when they are trying to increase their core indicators. We would like to note the data analysis and survey information has received the most comments because many institutions have made significant progress by finding errors in their data or hearing the student's perspective from survey data. I will share with you that at Temple College, the survey information has been very enlightening because of factors we never considered or realized were even an issue. We have one final poll. If you could take a moment and please answer this poll. Give me just a few more seconds. 88% of our people have voted. Just I'm waiting on a few more to finish voting, and I'll share the poll data with you.
Please mark your calendar for our 3P1 webinar on March 29th at 2 p.m. We will distribute webinar information in the near future. Thank you for attending our webinar today. We hope the information presented has given you a better understanding of 2P1 and answered the who, what, when, where, why, and how aspects for this Perkins Core Indicator. We'd like to end this webinar by giving thanks to the coordinating board for funding this project, and we'd like to offer our thanks to our webinar panelists, Dr. Catherine O'Brien, Ms. Michelle Freeman, Mr. Juan Garza, and Ms. Cheryl George Jones. Thank you.